All right, we're live. Hey, welcome back to Fire Engineers Humpday Hangout and to our show, Issues and Challenges in Today's Fire Service. I'm Rick Lasky, along with the rest of our crazy-ass crew. Chief John Sulka, we got Chief Curtis Burt, and we've got Chief Scott Thompson, author of the best-selling book, The Functional Fire Company. That is a thing we've been doing for years. Bobby used to do that, and Chief Burt's with the Pearland Fire Department of Texas, doing some great things. We're talking. Scott's with the Colony, Texas, had a good job, good house fire yesterday, saved some pets. John's with retired from the FDOI, busiest companies, and then South Blooming Grove Fire District in Orange County, New York. And then we've got our special guest with us. We're going to get to a second, Chief Ryan Fetzer, my chief. From the Wichita West Fire Department in North Texas. Just a reminder, folks, we always remind you this, that if you have any questions, head over to X or whatever, or and throw them out there for us. Our producer, Tammy, will get them to us, or I'll notice them. Just make sure you add hashtag FE Talk for Fire Engineering Talk. Before we get started and talk to Ryan here a little bit about his background and some of the things, we just want to throw our thoughts and prayers. Every one of us knows John McMahon from Florida. John was a huge figure in the fire service, not just in the pipes and drums. He was a drum major. He was at Keeping Tradition Alive every year. I just got something, Scott, when her baseball, when they were doing the fundraiser School for Crayons, the more crayons and all that, that guy went nuts, man. He was sending us cases of crayons. He was getting donated. Huge heart, great guy. He's going to be sorely missed. If you've been all over social media, you've seen all the posts regarding John.
And I think he came the first year to KTA, didn't he?
First year and all the way through, Scott. Yeah, absolutely.
I thought I remembered him from the very first year.
What a great person. What a great person. So today we're talking wildfires, wildland, wildfires, depending on where you're at. They're either going to call them wildland jobs or they're going to call them wildfires. That's the Smokey Bear thing. They changed that a little while back to only you can prevent wildfires. But our good, in fact, Ryan's not new to the show. Chief Fetzer's been with us before plenty of times from Wichita West. Ryan, congratulations on the new engine. It was worth a 2-hour drive to go see that new baby get pushed into the station.
Thank you. Glad you're able to make it.
Well, and then I got to see, its first official run was moments after you guys pushed it in. Jimmy and Brett and all them jumped on it and took it to a run, and that was pretty cool. But everything going good. New station still underway, right?
It is. Finally got drywall done, walls primered, so finally making some progress. Still don't have a move-in date, but making progress.
Well, to Curtis, John, and Scott, I was begging Ryan the other day. I said, "You just please let me come back and teach a class there, because the whole firehouse is incredible." We talked about these before on the show about the design, where you can always tell when a fire chief only designs a fire engine because they don't do it right. Ryan was part of our crew on the truck committee because of his background. Same thing with the station. You can always spot a station that was designed by the fire chief because nothing connects. Well, again, through his leadership, he did a committee, and it's all about, impact time. You can pull into that you're gonna be able to pull that new station, pull in, get out, go through one door into the PPE room, another door, out you go. And a lot of great thought put into that firehouse for a change. For a change out there. Ryan and his troops did a great job. But so we're talking wildfire. John, I want to go to you real quick because I saw, and I really love so far, I really love your new commissioner in the FDNY. He seems like a great guy and he gets it. But he did a little press conference about, as he referred to the historic number of brush fires in New York City. Because you and I have talked about this before. When you were in the Bronx, there are times I'm like, holy cow, Batman, you guys, when it gets going out in the parks or along the, some of the areas there, marshy, it takes off on you guys, right?
Yeah, New York City is really islands, Brooklyn and Queens are on Long Island. Staten Island is an island, and Manhattan is an island. Everything's an island. They all have a lot of coastal areas that are either park-like or grown with cattails and, or undevelopable. But and sometimes they get fires down there. They're difficult because fully half of it is on the waterfront. I mean, I guess you could call a fireboat. They got a couple little fireboats that probably come in and help them too. But like I said, we're not. I don't want to be judgmental, although I am judgmental. But it's not one of our highlights. It's not one of our top things that we do. But we do it. People are amazed. I don't know the number, but we have a number, not a large number, but I think we have 5 or 6, brush rigs out in Staten Island, down on the south coast of Queens and Brooklyn, and so occasionally we have a second or a third alarm brush fire, which is what I think they were talking about there the other day. They had at a big city park somewhere. But the whole region right now, separate from New York City, the whole New York metropolitan area, not even New York, farther south down into Jersey, farther north up into Connecticut and upstate, even up where I live. We just had a gigantic brush fire up here. I've been gone basically for a week. I did most of a week down to see down at James's house down in North Carolina. That whole time this thing was burning. Greenwood Lake, pretty well known lake. Derek Jeter's got a place over there. But anyway, they had a big 2,500. Then it went across the border. So of course there were 2 commands and 2 separate fires, and even though it was one big fire, so they had 2 2,500 acre fires, which for us is like an asteroid striking the planet. But anyway, the whole region is very dry. We're supposed to get rain tomorrow, first rain in like 41 days or something like that. Everybody's having brush fires. So New York City having a brush fire is, obviously it makes sense. They're right in the middle of everything else. And, I guess you could call it historical. Just having a brush fire is pretty historical in the city. But like all the rest of the brush fires, they all go out eventually,
Well, and we've said this before. It's never a big thing until they're threatening homes. And you may along the coastal end in New York City, but up where you're at in Orange County, you've got like a lot of money tucked away in different areas and different, I've been up there a bunch of times where, there's a lot of money at stake, just like for the rest of us when things take off and get going.
Right. All over the country, there's big, beautiful neighborhoods where people got 3 or 4 acres and 500,000-600,000 or more dollar houses, Yeah, so that can happen, I guess. But, and people have been doing the same crap for 500 years, right? They got all the shit around their house that's not maintained or trimmed. And, how about out in California? I mean, talk about imbeciles, right? They all get the wood shake roofs out there, and all they do is have brush fires out there in California. I would tell them good luck with that.
Well, in California is, we've talked about this before. We'll get to this as some of the leaders when it comes to the whole WUI, the wildland urban interface thing and all that. Scott and Curtis, you remember when we put TIFMAS together way back when, and I remember our first deployment up to when St. Joe and Nakona, all that was going, and it grew from there because we got tired of, this response today would whack out half the county or these 2 counties and this one. It was kind of like, as John would say, he refers to it as the takeout menu. You look at, give me an engine from Beeperville, Bopperville, whatever, instead of just going, give me a second alarm, give me a third alarm, whatever. And we changed that. Kurt, you bought, we brought the box cards. I remember you working on it in Denton County for a long time to get everybody on board. And I think a lot of the chiefs realized they weren't given up power. They were actually organizing. I've helped departments. There was a department in South Carolina when I was there. And the chief's like, well, I get to tell who's coming to my fires. I go, you still do. I said, here, let's do this card. So who do you send first alarm? I picked a house fire, not wildland. Who do you send to a house fire? Well, this engine, this truck, this, and we get help from them and them. Okay, let's write them in there. If you needed more help, who'd you call? Well, I'd call them then. Okay, let's put that in here. And I go, there you go. There's your card. And let's get some stations covered. It's still yours. You still get to say who's coming. Now you don't have to worry when you're out of town that your lieutenants or captains are guessing, so the coordinated response is huge when it comes to it. Like I said, Scott, you and Curtis both have guys on the TIFMAS group and that deploy that. Ryan, so Wichita West covers an area and what I would call North Texas, but Texoma, because you're right there, like next to Oklahoma and everything. The Red River separates you guys, but you guys run wildland like all year long. It doesn't matter, it's a little bit more intense in the summer, but it's kind of funny. People used to come up and go, so I bet you like all this rain. I go, no, because it's just going to grow this stuff bigger. Or water doesn't stick to the brown grass. It just makes it muddy where we get stuck. But so let's talk about this, Ryan. The setup you guys have out there, which I'm very proud of because I've been a part of it with you. I will say this, John's heard me say this before. There's been times, and Chief Fetzer, you heard me say it. I'm sitting in one of your brush trucks going, what the F am I doing here? That one we had the 3,000 where you guys just went out there again. It wrapped around me 3 times. Will got stuck. I'm like, what? And you're on the radio going, well, we have another 30 houses that are being jeopardized. It's approaching them. We had another 40 over in this. And when we're all said and done, I think that one, we lost a barn. All those houses that were in the path of this blowing 20 yards a second sideways fire. And you guys lost only a barn, you and the chief from Iowa Park, Andy. It was incredible. So let's talk about, let's go from the small brush fire, getting dispatched. You guys get there, and then let's walk it up from there as to how we start getting help, because they almost always grow to something a lot larger than what started out to be.
Yeah, so first, small, medium, large wildfires, all relative terms, mean something different to all of us. I mean, out there in John's area, small wildland fire may, or a large one, maybe, 15 acres or something. For us, we're going to look at 15, 30, 50 acres and still say, hey, that may be a small fire. All depends where it originates, what's being threatened for us. If it's out there in a field, 50-acre field, that's small fire. We can get around it pretty easily. You get into more of the wildland urban interface where we are threatening houses, and that 15-1 may seem like a large fire, but real small.
And Ryan,
get started.
Real quick, you just said it, because when you get up into the Rockies, a couple acres is like 100 acres up in the mountain. That you can't. When you're talking trees are lighting off and everything else. But go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. So we get a small start in our area, Iowa Parks area. We're on automatic aid with each other. Got that implemented a few years ago. Had some pushback from a few firefighters when it first started, but it's been wonderful. Especially both volunteer departments don't know who's available during the day. Everyone has their day job, so we get dual toned out there. Officer gets on scene and starts to size up and kind of goes from there. We're lucky we have a lot of resources in this area. Fairly recently, Texas Forest Service put a task force right here in Wichita County up in Burke Burnett. For a long time, we didn't have that. So if we needed resources, they're a minimum of 2 hours away. Oof. Now we've got them 15 minutes up the road. So we get out there, realize, hey, we're going to need other help. Along with calling our other departments around us, we can start the forestry service out there. Just kind of scales as we need to. They'll come out if we've got 2-3 acres burning, and we say, hey, we need the forestry service to come put a dozer line around this. They're going to respond as long as they're available. It doesn't have to be anything major. We don't have to hit, a couple thousand acres before they're willing to start to mobilize. If they're sitting there at their office, or if they're on something else they're finishing up, they're going to break loose. They're going to send us resources. So that's been a huge benefit to this area. Talking to some of their task force leaders, that has actually become the most active task force Texas Forest Service has in the entire state, is the Boomtown Task Force right here in Burke Burnett.
Well, and John and Scott and Curtis, we've had Terry McGrath with us for years, and now Terry coordinating, excuse me, what he's been coordinating for a long time is the deployments for everything, for tornadoes, wildland, hurricanes, everything else. He's intimately involved with that. But I remember, and Ryan knows this, and I think I told John about this. A lot of our guys are like, we want to get deployed. We want to send in some of the departments. We want to send a tender. And Terry goes, I'd like to do that, but you guys are the busiest wildfires in the state. We're usually sending them to you. And I remember we had a couple of guys that wanted to go, and what I think, Ryan, they put them. They went and they put them up at the hotel. Burke?
Yeah,
Burke. So they're with like Durango or somebody or whatever. And then they couldn't go to our stuff till they were active. I go, you see what I'm saying? Where you're going here to sit here to wait to go back to us, because that was Terry's big thing, is they sent all the resources to us. So difference between normal and then I've just said this before, red flag days there in your area. You can't drive past a hotel or a grocery store that doesn't have units from all over the country already preset, right?
Yeah, so TIFMAS, working with Forest Service, does great with that, pre-mobilizing units. Can't tell you how often Wichita Falls has mobilized for one of the strike teams, and they may get assigned to Childress. Very quickly, they're responding to Wichita County, and at that point forward, they usually just keep them right there in Burke-Burnett. Again, those guys are dedicated to a task force. They're not going home at night. They're still staying with the team at a hotel, at the warehouse up there. And then they're, local call in our areas. I had Jimmy was assigned to strike team the end of last year after that big fire you're talking about. He got assigned on a tender with Freeburg Cooper. They staged in Burke-Burnett the entire time. They did respond out to Baylor County on a large fire, came back to Wichita County on a fire. But the whole time he was right here in his own county, just having to stay 15 miles up the road instead of going home every night. If we bumped a call, he wasn't responding with us unless we actually got them mobilized to come give us a hand with it. So, fire is going up. They're pre-mobilizing them. They're getting them situated in this area. They're scanning radios. They've got our local, fire channels and stuff. So they're listening. They're using satellite resources. So I'll get texts every now and then going, hey, we're going to smoke signatures here. Do you know who's on this fire, who's on that fire? And then on our red flag days also, our local career department here, Wichita Falls, they will actually do some automatic aid as well, sending units out in the county to assist us since they're readily staffed already.
And what's nice, Ryan, there is the and John, I'm going to get to John here in a second about what they do in Orange County, but how really everybody plays nice together. I was kind of surprised. Once in a while you get somebody with an ego, but it doesn't matter. You don't even know where the county boundary lines are after a while. And Curtis, talk through, I know there were some struggles, but you were able to work really hard and get the box card stuff working. Scott, you remember in Denton County, to get some of the departments to buy into it that weren't familiar with it. I thought we're not Chicago. Don't bring that stuff down here. And then I think they realized very quickly, like what Ryan goes through, the resources were at their fingertips, not just for structure stuff, but when we did the Wildland Task Force, it was an incredible change for them. You had some issues to work through there, didn't you, to get that pushed?
I think the biggest thing with that was just getting everybody to understand, like you were talking about, this isn't taking power away. It's you guys pre-planning your stuff. Everybody's got their orders pre-planned on Uber to be delivered at night for dinner, but they won't pre-plan a first alarm or a second alarm fire for their guys to be able to just get on dispatch and let dispatch handle it like they should be. So once we realized that everybody was setting their own requirements for their place or their area, it made it a little easier. But we went round and round for a long time until they realized how much it worked. And then they saw us using it. And when us in Louisville and Flower Mountain and stuff were doing automatically going to each other's calls and getting on the road that much quicker, that's when they really started jumping on board to see how convenient it was.
Well, we weren't running out of stuff. Scott, you've always had, I've called it the finesse, to be able to get other chiefs on board.
That has ended.
I carry a lot of.
That's no longer the case.
I carry a lot of the John Salka finesse. Are you kidding me? Get your shit together. Come on over here. No. But you've always had that finesse to be able to, seriously, all kidding aside, to bring a lot of people together to go, you know what, guys. And John, we'll talk about this in a second. I brought this up in class the other day. He don't care what color fire engine shows up at his house. If his daughter was trapped or any of his family, just get to his house as quick. I don't think the public cares who's coming to their incident, what they're doing. I think they do care when they see that we get caught short because we weren't planning big, right, Scott?
Yeah, Rick, and I'm going to give you credit, but you brought it to this area before you came to Louisville. We all had egos, and nobody would play with anybody else. And I think you actually started it with the truck. You used to say, "Hey, we'll get our truck on the road anywhere anybody calls for it, and we'll work it out afterwards." But you came in and we all started talking, and that still carries on today where we all work together. And, we have a similar mindset, a similar philosophy of how things can go. And we've started to realize that none of us can handle, these types of incidents on our own, and we have to play nice together. But yeah, you know how it is. Fire chiefs have egos, and we want to build our empire, and everybody wants to do everything. And so, yeah, you kind of started that. And I'll mention now that Chad Thiessen, who is currently the chief in Lake Cities, he's kind of heading up a task force now, and we're relooking at some of the allocation. The box cards are still there, but what we found out is we were pulling too much from one area, and if a second fire came in, we had challenges. So now we're getting people on the road earlier. So, the colony may be going to far North Denton County when we get these red flag days. So we're trying to even improve a little bit on what was set up when you were here, but it's worked really well, and it's carried over to structure fires, and we're getting high rises now, and we're going to have to depend on one another. So it's really great when you see everybody willing to work together.
Well, and exactly, Scott, and like we talked about before, like Curtis, remember up in Mabus, when we were on the committees, that we used to play with the box cars. We used to go, okay, all right, so if they already have a fire going, what happens if this happens, and all that to make sure. John, talk about. I've always been super impressed. I brought it up in class the other day in South Dakota. We were in Vermilion, South Dakota, which is a great fire department, great group there. But John, we were talking about Orange County. Now you've got a fire coordinator, but I've always been super impressed how well it's going on right now with all the wildland fires there. How well you guys work together. You're talking some career departments, but a lot of volunteer departments, but nobody gives a damn what color engine. I mean, I get the Buffy. I'll call you. I go, no, they already have 3 departments there. There's absolutely no hesitation for anyone there, it seems like, to work with each other. I mean, has that always been, you've been there 40 plus years, has that always been that way, or has that been a work in progress?
I can't imagine that it was always that way. If you look far enough back in any area, any region, any state, you'll probably see some of that territorial stuff happening like Scott was just talking about. It's just natural to the fire service. But modern day, the past 20 or 30 years, I mean, I was a chief twice there. We don't have a big brush or wildland. I'll call it a problem in a battalion that I work in, Battalion 5, the 5 departments that are around me. Obviously, some places have it, have much more potential than others. Like I just said, that big fire just wrapped up probably a couple of days ago. There's probably still companies there, maybe either standing by or wrapping up or just chasing little fires. But it works pretty well. However, now I was gone for the whole thing. But I get all this nonsense on my pager as well, and my fire department, they have a little group me site that they all when they get back or when they're going down, they did a lot of stuff by they go online. The county would go online and send a message out. Any department available tomorrow night at 1900 hours till whatever. They had the day broken down into sort of like shifts. I'm not quite sure how they broke them down or how long they were. I think they're about 8 or 10-hour shifts, and then departments amongst themselves would talk to their people and say, who's available? Anybody available tomorrow night? And if they got, 5 or 6 or 7 guys, then they would get back to them and say, yeah, we got a brush truck, we got a ATV, a UTV, a ABC, whatever all that shit is. And we got 7 guys and we're available. Now, what happened was, nine places would call up and say we're available, and they'd need 2, So guys started to get a little bent, a little pissed off. What? They didn't take us? We're not going? And they wouldn't tell them till like 2 hours before who was going, So I know they need to work on that. Pete, the chief here in South Lemon Grove, he talked about it a couple of times, and I think I don't know why they don't do it a little bit more long term. I don't know why they don't set up. I mean, they knew they were going to be there for 4, 5, 6, 7 days. This was a gigantic fire. You'd think they would have started to set stuff up 2 and 3 days ahead of time and plug them in and say, okay, you got it. South Lemon Grove, you got, today's Wednesday, you got Saturday morning at 0800 till noon. Be here with your 6 guys. Maybe they didn't want to go that far out because people could jump in and sign up or jump in and grab it and then maybe not show, or then maybe things would change. I don't know why they would, but it seemed to me like there was a lot of last minute shuffling and a lot of last minute picking and a last minute canceling on people. And in a volunteer fire service, I don't know, that shit just don't cut it. Guys will be available, but they're not going to make themselves available to family and to work and to everybody. Nope, I can't do anything Friday night, tomorrow night, my company's going to that big brush fire in Greenwood Lake, and then they don't go, so I know it sounds a little wussy, but when guys sign up and say, yeah, we're available, we got the equipment, we got the guys, we're ready, and then they don't take them. So I think they just have to do a little better, at least here in Orange County, and I'm sure they learned a little bit from this fire. I think they'll do a little bit more long-term scheduling for larger fires. It's not career. You just can't say transmit a third alarm and more companies have guys on duty and they're going to come rolling over. They got to all. I don't know who in the group has been in a volunteer fire department, but there's a little more finesse involved when you're dealing with the volunteers because they can come or they can not come, and they can say I'm available Wednesday night, on Tuesday, and then when Wednesday night gets there, I guess they could say, you know what, something came up. I get called into work or whatever happens. So,
well, and the thing, Ryan, you deal with all the time, and I mean, what I'll do is, all of us that do the wildland stuff, if you don't do it, it is an extremely labor-intensive operation. That's the one thing that I was reminded of quickly. Not, having been in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, North Idaho, especially when you're trekking up into the Rockies, up in the mountains, that kind of stuff. But just not only are we dealing with snakes, let's not even talk about snakes right now, but I remember Bradley doing a Mary Lou Retton out there when, I saw his legs go whoop and he's like, snake. But anyway, it's labor intensive. It's hard work. Fighting structural fires is hard, but you get there, you do your thing, you go to rehab and you're done. And we try to, but sometimes rehab is bringing water out to the crews that are already out there that can continue to work. And you get hand crews going. And then sometimes the accessibility is a big deal. Let's talk about water. You see, Bob, the chief from Cherry, Illinois, the Cherry Fire Protection District in Illinois, talked about having tenders, tankers, where you call them ready to go, with tanks or nursing or whatever. I know that's always been a big issue for you, Ryan, in that area, because a lot of non-hydrated areas is bringing enough water, because the fire service in general, we suck without water. But so let's talk about what you do to coordinate the water getting there and where do you put it. And then I want you to talk about your air support, because I've always been impressed. You mentioned the dozers before, that the Forest Service will just get them going. Boom, here they come. Here come. You can hear them coming, the dozers. But man, just seeing them airplanes, sometimes you stop to take pictures, but you stop because it gives you a chance to catch your breath. And they're the difference makers. But talk about getting the water to the scene, the need, and from who, and then let's talk about your air support and what you do to get that.
Yeah, so a lot of it here we still do the takeout menu stuff. Part of that's with when we get a fire going, there's usually not just one good fire going in the area. So even on a box response, if we try and say, hey, do another box, dispatch will start them without realizing, hey, those departments are already on another fire. So that's part of why we still have to kind of pick and choose who we want. We get in our emergency management coordinator a lot of the time because he's got an idea of who's where, and we'll do the, skipping over other departments. Like Scott was talking, you start to take too much from one area or something, and you're leaving them, vulnerable. So we'll sit here and skip some departments. You get people who worked up over that point, but most of our rural departments in this area have at least one water tender carrying anywhere from 2,000 to 4,500 gallons of water. Another benefit we have is there's a lot of oil field in this area. A lot of them are using tractor trailers that they will hook up and come out to us. Now, we're always careful because oil patch, you never know where they're getting their water from. It could be some dirty slop water full of rocks and pebbles and stuff that'll jam up our pumps quickly. But we've got a couple, in the central area, Owl Park right there, that they're getting good, clean city water. They'll bring them out. So we could have 6, 7, 8,000 gallon transports on scene for us.
Well, I remember the one saved us. Remember over there, I just went out there again. I was like, we're done. And the deputies are going, it's running that hayfield. It's going to be to these 9 houses like now. And that tanker, that semi showed up. And I'm like, oh my God, how'd that get here?
Now, staging them's a little bit more difficult, having a big tractor trailer, 40, 53 foot trailer. So we may even put them in a more open area and just make it to where our smaller tenders can go to them to top off to get to the more accessible areas for our type 6s and stuff to get to. So we're shuttling water from water tenders already, just try and get it closer to the fire line as we need to.
Well, I know some of the places you used to send me to fill when I was driving a tender for you. I had to pack a sandwich, and get toll money because I'm like, you got to be kidding me. How far do I got to go? We were in Holiday and I had to go all the way back. I was like, good God.
You're on that train derailment there in Oakland Union and had to go all the way into Vernon, I believe, to get water. So, that was
I had to fuel up for you twice. I was there for trying to go. I had to go fill up at the gas station with diesel twice, because we were running so much. Yeah. So, all right, talk about air support, because I've always been fascinated how good you guys, I don't want to say good you have it because it depends about the availability, but they will send you seats and a heartbeat, small, and if you can, quickly, not quickly, but let's walk through the abbreviations of what people always see the large DC-10s and they go, what is that? Well, that's a very large tanker. Well, guess what? That's the acronym, but seats stand for something, and you gradually get bigger and bigger and bigger and change from water to retardant and everything else. But
yeah, so our seats, you can have a single engine air tack that is their single engine air tanker. You get some of them. We love to see our fire bosses in this area. They come in, they're manufactured right down the road from us right here in Aldie, Texas, air tractors, but they're quickly able to go and scoop off of a body of water. Some will do it pretty narrow lakes in the area. Some prefer to go all the way out to, Lake Arrowhead or something else. They've got a larger lake, but the fire bosses are able to scoop water, turn around, come dump 800 gallons very quickly. They always fly 2 to 4 in a group. So you could have 4 drops, 800 gallons each, drop it on the line there. They make a loop, go scoop off the lake, and they're right back within a few minutes. We also get our seats that'll come up out of Abilene or somewhere else that are actually filling up with retardant to do drops. We'll get super scoops. They can come out of Canada or other areas. They'll come down just like the fire bosses, but they carry a lot more water, take longer to turn around, but again, a little bit larger lake to be able to scoop off of. But they can do the turnarounds quicker than the retardant drops can also, because again, they're not having to land, refill, take off. Then we'll get to our lats and our V-lats, our large air tankers and our very large air tankers. Again, that's state of Texas. Texas Forest Service coordinates what aircraft we get in the state. Those are all contracts. The state, Texas, does not own any firefighting aircraft, so they're always contracting out with somebody else. As our wildfire danger is higher, they'll have them on standby and stage them strategically throughout the state. They do have contracts with different airports that are set up as tanker bases. So very quickly, they're able to dedicate runways and taxiways and space for them to be able to set up the retardant fill stations and stuff. Abilene's a good example of that. Austin has areas for it. And then, so the large fire you're talking about just last year that you're out on with us, Rick, we coordinated 14 aircraft on that one fire. At the same time we were burning that fire, a couple thousand acres, we had another one going in Wichita County also. So both of us are fighting for resources, saying, hey, we need dozers, we need aircraft. So when TFS showed up on the scene, we were able to work with the task force leaders and the regional fire coordinators and split the resources. So the other fire got all the ground resources. They had multiple dozers out there and they got the engines of that one. Whereas the fire we were on, we got dedicated aircraft. They did have air tack that was doing figure 8 loops in the air. So they would be checking our fire coordinated air resources here, and then they'd break off and go do a loop around their fire just to make sure they're making progress and give command updates on what they're seeing from the air. But they didn't get any of the air resources. We didn't get any of the ground resources.
Well, and talk for our viewers, because not everybody's, you see the videos and somebody will say, well, that plane didn't drop anything. I go, no, you didn't notice a little white puff of smoke that came out. And now here comes, so you're talking with, and in fact, there's been a couple of times I've had to talk to them because you guys were just overwhelmed with people screaming about their houses and stuff when they were coming into like my area. You had me assigned, but you've got a certain individual up in the air you're talking to who's coordinating everything. He's like air command. Talk about that.
Yeah, so air attack is up there. We've got air attack up there making his circles, and he's the one who's coordinating all the ground to air usually. And if we have air attack on scene, they're the ones who's going to communicate to the other aircraft, the planes. Damon mentioned we'll get helicopters out there also. They'll do bucket dumps and stuff. So he's going to be that main communication. Any LAT or VLAT, large air tankers or very large air tankers that come into the area will also have a lead plane with them. So as air attack is telling the lead plane, hey, this is a plane, this is where we want it, that lead plane or air attack will come through and do a burst of smoke to signify, hey, this is where we want it to be. The actual tanker will then follow them through. They may do a spurt also saying, hey, is this accurate? This is where you want to see it. They'll say yes. They'll make another loop, and then they actually do their dump run. So yeah, when you see them just pass through, that's a lot of what they're doing is they're making sure that they agree with where that drop is going to be placed before they just waste a load of retardant. If they're off by 20, 30 feet, it can make a huge difference, let alone if it's a couple hundred feet from where they expected the drop to be placed.
Well, it's pretty phenomenal. And Kurt and Scott, you've dealt with them. John, these seats, when he's talking about these, when you first see them, you go, well, they can't do much. It looks like a little, I don't want to say a Cessna, but it looks like a small plane up in the air when you're used to seeing big ones with the pontoons, if you will, the screw they carry the water, but they're usually running in threes. And Ryan, you'll see one, all of a sudden they're like, dive, here they come. And here comes one, and here comes the other one. And about the time you're going, I'm done with this. I'm physically exhausted. We're not making any. And all of a sudden the heroes show up from the air and either slow it down, finish it for you, or help you get around it to kind of pinch it off a little bit to do some things. I saw a bunch of, I know up by you, John, it seemed like they were using a lot of helicopters scooping and dropping down in there, right?
Yeah, for that recent fire happened to be right at Greenwood Lake, which is a gigantic lake. So they had the water source literally right there. One of the exposures of the fire was the lake. So it was from Stewart. I believe it was military, Air National Guard. They call them Bambi buckets. I'm not quite sure where that came from, but anyway, so they were able to scoop right into the lake and fly right up there and make the drops.
Oh, it's pretty cool. And Curtis, you're dealing with, it's funny because you could go up in the Panhandle and deal with a different terrain. You can go up by Ryan and deal with a very hilly, rocky. I used to keep a little river rock, guys, on the front dashboard of the brush truck that Ryan has, one of them, because it's the only thing that kept me from plunging. We did about 9 different fires in one day. After that big one, Ryan, then you sent us to Iowa Park, and Mark was spotting me. Lieutenant Venzer spot me, and we're working at one line with that fire, and all of a sudden he does this, stop, and I stop, and he goes, come here. I get out, and because there's all of a sudden crevices, there's ravines out of nowhere, and I'm looking, and my left front tire was on this little rock. I'm going, so that was my lucky rock. I kept it on the dash of that thing just as a reminder.
Did you put the brake on before you got out of that?
Yes, and the brake was on then too.
Get behind the truck.
Oh God, I love you. I'm gonna go TP your trees with toilet paper, but yeah. So that being said, you've got that terrain. I've always said you go to East Texas, it's all pine trees. It's all about fuel load, like it is in the fire service. It's all about fuel load.
Yeah.
People go, oh, it's only grass. Well, come with us when it's burning 20 yards a second. You're going, and then it's burning anything in its path. You can see it coming. But Curtis, you guys even are dealing with a lot of John does too, a lot of marshy. You really can't get to it depending on where you're at, kind of thing, right? Down there you're going from a big time urban area to areas that are still very marshy down there because you guys are right next to Houston.
Yeah, we got a lot of areas where you just protect exposures and wait for it to come somewhere because there's no way you're going to get in there, especially if you can't get boats to it or you can't get, some access roads or something. But that's one big thing to bring up too is nobody really can East Coast versus the West Coast versus middle. Nobody fights these things or has the same fires that others do. When we first moved to North Texas and stuff, those brush fires are like sprints. They're moving at 20 acres or 20 yards a second or whatever. We're on the East Coast or up in the mountains or something. You may be going really slow and just having to worry about terrain, like you were saying, moving your brush trucks. I remember on a couple fires we had up there that we were just getting on them and driving almost as fast as we could just to keep up with them. So you got a lot of different things. And when you do that, you got to deploy your stuff a lot better. So like Ryan was saying with your tankers and stuff, you got to get water to a lot larger area because you're going to be chasing this thing all over the place.
And Scott, do you remember when we had to get everybody changed with the PPE? I remember when I first got there, I was watching our guys run around brush trucks with turnout gear on. It's 135,000 degrees outside.
Yep.
And I'm like, don't we have any like wildland gear that you could put on? And they're wearing bunker pants and turnout coats. And I was like, and then they're all like, someone take my blood pressure and running IVs into them. I'm like, we need to. It took us a little bit to get everybody dressed the right way, right, Scott?
Yeah. No, it did. And it took a long time to realize that. But in Texas, that can be brutal. So that's just part of it, extending the work cycles and taking care of your people and making sure they have the right gear. But the other part of it is you got to have gear. I see a lot of these pictures, and it's no fault, but, you'll see guys out there in their blue jeans and their shirts doing this. And, that it changes or they get caught up in a fence and now we got a serious burn. So that's a conversation that you have to have is, I know money is limited and so forth, but you got to have some level of protection on these things because they can be so unpredictable. A wind change can occur, and you don't take them serious, you're going to be in a lot of trouble very quickly.
Go ahead, John.
You know what? It's amazing to me, especially with the fire service, how I'll just use the word anal because it really is accurate and appropriate. How anal everybody is about standards and requirements and everything else. Turnout gear. You see people packaging and throwing structural turnout gear that's 10 years old in 1 week. Nope, can't use it anymore. 10 years old. Oh, I got 2 brand new coats here. 10 years old. They've never been worn. They're going in the garbage, And everybody's got to put the chevrons and the stripes on the backs of their rig because the NFPA says it. And then they send the guys up into the woods to a brush fire with, like you said, jeans on or structural gear or inappropriate protective clothing.
Yeah.
And I'm saying to myself, there had to be a half-hour class at the executive fire officer about this, right? I mean, they're giving executive fire officer trophies out every week somewhere, and these guys are sending people up into the woods with either no gear or the wrong gear. I find that ridiculous and inexcusable.
Well, and I'll go back to Ryan. Ryan's got a decent-sized department, a lot of volunteers, and he chooses as the chief there. Let's talk structural stuff. I know we're talking wildland fires here, but you can't go play anywhere. He made a decision a long time ago. He and his team, we're going to do the 10-year thing because, you can't go participate in live fire training with teaks and that unless you have.
I wasn't complaining about 10 years. I'm just saying everybody observes everything. Everybody observes the things they want and they ignore the things that they don't want.
Well, exactly. You're right, John. Where I was going with that is
we pick and choose.
Yeah,
absolutely. Like staffing.
Where I was going with that is he made a decision to do that and equip everybody with the proper wildland equipment. And then we go right next door to us sometimes, whatever direction I won't point, Ryan. And there's some folks they're doing the best they can. They got a $5,000 a year budget and they show up with whatever they've got. And Ryan, you and I have talked about this before. My frustration, I've said it on this show plenty of times, where's our money? Where's the fire service money when it comes to, we've always talked about 2 sets of gear, but where's our money, to ensure that all of our people are properly protected? We talk a good game, but if your volunteer fire department has a small budget, they're doing whatever they can to get the right nozzles and to get the right equipment, do the other stuff.
Keep fueling the trucks.
Exactly. That's my thing is where's our money? We love law enforcement. God bless law enforcement. We love it. All right. We have family in law enforcement. We're very pro it. That's our other family. But they tend to get a lot of money on their end for a lot of stuff. And we're fighting for, and we've said this before when it comes to volunteers, there's no volunteer police department out there. There's reserves and auxiliaries, but there's not one volunteer police department out there somewhere. Oh, we're just all volunteer. And we're always fighting for everything, Ryan, fundraisers and everything else to make sure that people are proper. But John brings up a great point.
Well, to John's point, I mean, some of those departments you're talking about, Rick, the sad thing is they have the gear. We've seen the gear. Their chiefs will brag that we have the gear for our firefighters, but they choose not to put it on when they respond to these fires. They choose to say, hey, I'm riding on the back of a GI. I don't need to wear that. We saw one recently within our area that they showed up in shorts, T-shirts, and they had one female on the back of a truck that was wearing flip-flops. Very quickly turn around. As an IC out there on those fires, we will not engage them. If they show up without the PPE, it's a liability on us. We'll send them back home. I've got mutual aid departments in my area that I can call, but I will only call them if I need water supply. I can call them out there and they can be wearing almost whatever they want because they're going to be parked on a closed highway or somewhere else where all they're doing is handing a hose to another truck to fill up off of. They're nowhere near a fire line. Well,
and Ryan, your department suffered a line of duty death during a wildland incident, and just north of us, 10 minutes north of us, and a female firefighter, and she was wearing everything. We talked how rapid, John, you said, Scott Curtis, about how quick things can change on the wildland side. It wrapped around her. And I mean, you could probably see her where she was at from the rig. It wrapped around her and killed her, burned her alive. I mean, I'm just saying, so
people have to also understand that these are just as dangerous. And just like you said, they can kill you just as much as going into a structure fire. Absolutely. Not only do we have to have PPE, but we need to look at rehab, and we need to look at EMS being on the scene and looking at all the other stuff that we put in a house fire.
We had a guy hit by a tree. Killed at a brush fire with a tree. Tree hit him. 18-year-old kid dead.
No, and that happens a lot. Go ahead, Scott. It happens a
I
lot.
want to shift gears a little bit because I want to ask you your thought on this, and this is a philosophy thing that I bought into, but I want to hear your thoughts. So, and it's what we just kind of talked about. So, we're going to a fire, and we know it has a chance to get big really quick, and we have resources coming. What are your thoughts about in the early stages of the incident, maybe taking one of those brush trucks, one or two of them, and starting to use them to build a command team so that we have a very upfront, strong command presence? Because the stuff that I've been involved in when I was in Athens, and we had some in Lake Cities, you know, it's got to be a coordinated effort, and we can throw a lot of resources at it. But if those resources aren't coordinated, if we don't set up divisions to where we're working efficiently and addressing those things, you know, rehab and having a weather look at them. But what are your thoughts about maybe pulling some of the tactical units apart to create that command team when we know we're going to have a lot of stuff coming in from the outside? Is that a fair trade-off to take maybe that brush truck out of the fight so that we can use those people to set up that team? What are your thoughts on that?
Let's throw that one to Ryan, because Ryan, you know, you've heard me talk about, I was at a large wildland incident with you. I had Joe with me, and I'm not going to say where it was, but no one knew where anybody was at. We just engaged. I mean, it was like there was absolutely zero coordination. And I'm just going to say, not to embarrass him, but Chief Fetzer, Ryan, shows up. And John, you know how I talk about your guys talk as soon as the 18th Battalion shows up, they hear your voice in the radio and they know things are going to get better. Ryan's the same way. If I'm at a wildland job and I hear Chief 701 pull up, I already know everything's going to get better because he doesn't put up with crap from people, but he knows how to make it all happen. You know, and I watched that personally at that one fire where we went from totally bag of marbles hit the ground going different directions to him getting everything sewn together. But Ryan, what are your thoughts on that, or that whole command structure at the beginning?
So that incident you're talking about was one that, you know, I actually did one of those big NIMS no-nos where I showed up and just kind of started to assume command, and here I am assuming command of somebody else's fire at that. So they had an IC show up who was an assistant chief on a neighboring department. It was their fire, but he's trying to run command from the driver's seat of a brush truck as one of the primary resources in there engaging on the fire line. Every one of us in this group knows you cannot do that. You know, on a small, quick IA, you know, initial attack, you know, 1, 2, 3 acre fire, yeah, you can probably, you know, handle that. It's going to be 2 truck fire or something. He's got multiple heads on this fire. He's got multiple departments coming in, multiple resources showing up, and he has no clue where people are. He doesn't know where to send them. His fire chief showed up, thought he was going to take command. Well, then they get bumped to another fire in that area. And he goes, hey, if you'll stay here and mark the scale, I'm going to go check that out. So then we've got other resources showing up. You see me in command. So they start checking in with me going, hey, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And finally, I'm not going to let them just sit there. I put them to work. But Scott, to your point, you know, around this area, those brush trucks usually are limited resources that we don't necessarily want to take a brush truck out of service to do command. We've done it if we've had to, but we get enough resources, or a lot of resources showing up, especially if we get the forestry service involved. They're going to show up with 2 or 3 additional pickup trucks and stuff. If we've got a strike team here, they're going to have a command wagon with them. You know, I've been told by surrounding departments, if they call for mutual aid, if I'm coming, they really don't want to see me on a brush truck. They want to see me come in a pickup or a command unit or something for that specific purpose. That way it gives people freed up that they can, you know, be lookout. They can be slinging weather. They can be division chiefs, division supervisors in areas. The big fire Rick was talking about last year where he was out on, you know, just so we had Fortune aircraft and stuff. That was that same thing. We had multiple surrounding chiefs showed up to assist with command. So while we had Owl Park had IC on it, he had us that he could send us at different areas to be staged up as division chiefs, division soups, or lookouts and stuff. So, you know, I had my assigned areas. The same fire we had last year, we just burned again this year. I sent, you know, Rick a screenshot showing this year's fire overlaid last year's fire, and it's almost identical to where we burned. So we knew we were going into. This one shifted a little bit more to the east and actually threatened more houses. Last year we lost 1 barn. This year we got through it with losing 1 little storage shed.
Well, and Ryan, and
you know,
Scott, oh, go ahead, John.
Listening to this, and I have very limited experience with wildland fires, but you know, if you compare wildland fires to structural fires, obviously structural fires, the easy or the convenient thing is it's at one location. Even a gigantic building, it's at one location. You know what I'm saying? Everybody descends on that one location, and eventually you figure out who the incident commander is and whatever. these wildland fires, some of them are immense. Some of them are the geographically, challenging. You got fire fronts, so you got areas maybe that aren't even visible from other sides of the fire. This is not, and I'm not being critical. I'm just making an observation. This is not a vehicle. This is not a vehicle discussion. This is a communication discussion. You should be able to respond to a damn brush fire by horseback. It doesn't matter what you're in, a pickup truck or a brush truck or on a damn horse. Whoever's in charge should be on. I just wrote the article. It just came out. Being command of the radio, own the radio, right? Like whoever is in command, obviously that decision has to be made by, the several commanders that are there if you got mutual aid people coming in. But once somebody's in command, that's a communications issue. There's got to be a command channel established, and you should be able to establish a command channel. I mean, the military does it over hundreds of miles. They coordinate, units that are attacking other units and stuff like that. Got to develop a better communication system where whoever's in command is identified, and folks, whether they're in vision of the guy or within the same area, or whether they're 10 miles away on a different fire front, they should be able to be coordinated by that person on that radio or whatever mode they're using.
Well, and there's a tremendous amount of experience with you guys on this panel. Ryan, your wildland, and besides your structural and rescue stuff, I mean, you guys get hellacious fatal accidents and your structure fires, but wildland wise, Ryan, your background, your experience, you and I've had this conversation on the side of the road a couple of times. The difficulty in tracking, you just said multiple heads before. I want you to explain that, because some people may not know what we're talking about. We talk multiple heads. You would think that, it's nice. You're going to this one brush fire and everything's great. And we're going to call this, Zulu, and we're going to call this, and we're going to call this. But when you've got all this all over here, tracking what units are where, because I know there are times you sent me in an area that I was working and I looked around and went, I'm no longer in that area. I'm in a whole nother area because we kept working that line. How difficult is it? And I wish we're always late with the technology. Like the military, they could drop skids out planes and they have a tracking device to know exactly where that stuff went. Talk about the difficulty of just command and control at a large scale incident, and at the same time explain what multiple heads are to our audience.
Yeah, so the tracking, again, Tech Support Service is really getting a hold of that. So when we're out there, we have TIPMAS resources or Forest Service resources. They have the tracking capabilities. So I've got an app on my phone that I can pull it up and I can see those resources. So right now, if they deploy for TIFMAS, that strike team, each of those engines is given a cell phone. They're using that cell phone to be able to track where they are on a map. So we can see each one of those engines, those tenders, those dozers, their personnel popping up on there. I was told starting this year, going into next year, they're doing away from issuing those cell phones, and they're actually issuing GPS units to them. There's a good chance that some of the units that respond regularly with TIFMAS will be issued one that'll stay with the truck 24/7. You're not only going to get it on deployments and stuff. Some great resources out there. We talked to a guy just last week, came out to our Chiefs meeting, talking about a new type of pass device they're using that are really pushing towards the wildland side because it has that GPS tracking capability of it. So command can pull it up on a computer and look at it. Issue with all that, we just talk budgets. These volunteer departments, these rural departments don't have a budget to pay for a GPS like that requires, cell plans, data plans and stuff, subscription plans to keep up with. So it makes it hard. You're relying on that engine operator to know where they are and relay that information. It's all the communication, like John's saying. You've got to be able to say where they are. So if you're running down a line and, I expect you to be on the left flank and following this left flank up to the head of the fire, that's where I'm hoping you are. If you divert from that, you end up somewhere else. We don't know where you are unless somebody else gets eyes on you to say, hey, I've got them over in this area now. If you get turned around in there and stuff, it causes those issues with us. But that's also where Air Attack has helped us out as well, that they can identify those units. I know all of our units, and I want to say most of the surrounding units have the engine identifiers on their roof. So Air Attack circling up ahead can help say, hey, I've got this unit on this line. That's more so Air Attack can tell us who needs to get out of the way of the retardant drops, but it helps us know where they might be.
Well, that's a couple of times you were talking about where they called me because the number on the top of your brush rig asking me specifics, but you can't look, it's not like you can go out and look at a street sign and go, hey, we're at the corner of walk and don't walk, and it keeps changing, that whole thing. You're all over the place unless you know specifically where I would give you an address. We're protecting this house at such. Remember, I did that for you. Now we're at this house. We're at this house. You know, I talked to a couple of hot shots a few months ago, and I'm like, so how do you guys track each other as you're peeling off out of that plane? He goes, we don't. We get on the ground, we call each other. I'm like, wow. Even today, we're still not tracking guys jumping out of planes. Go ahead, John.
Well, no, I mean, another thing is, I know FDNY is doing it. We're doing it structurally, but we get a drone unit now. We get this command thing that, you know, as a captain goes to like every second alarm. They throw these drones up in the air now, and they get a look at the back of the building. They even have obviously, in addition to cameras, it's got thermal measuring devices on it, so they can look and tell the chief out in front, who's in front of a 1,200 by 1,500 foot factory. He can say, you know, the fire's in the BC corner. We can see with the thermal that, you know, I don't know what the limitations would be because you have air resources already there doing different things, but a drone would be another way that somebody at a command post could get a machine up in the sky, and he could start looking at the different areas. He could fly the damn thing around and see where people are and what they're doing, you know, without asking them where they are. He could find out where they are by visually looking, you know.
Well, Scott talked about using his yesterday at their multiple alarm fire. Ryan, you say, I always tell this story, you know, when we pulled up, we went automatic at Iowa Park by the lake, the dried out lake. And I'm like, oh God, we're going to have to walk like miles to get to this thing. And then my chief pulls up, Ryan Fetzer pulls up, hang on a second, up with his drone. And he's like, okay, here, no, you guys, if you'll cut right here, walk here. But I'm like, he just saved us like 17,000 yards worth of walking, and it's pointing where the head is and where this is. And hey guys, you got a hot spot here. You know, I'm seeing this here. Ryan sends his drone up in the air, and
Great resource.
Oh, if you're not thinking that way nowadays, if you think that we don't need a drone, you're out of your mind. He said, I remember just that one. He's used it a ton more, but that one instance, I was like, oh, thank God, my
It's been such a game changer for us. So our department owns one, just like John was saying. You know, it's got a good zoom camera, but also has a thermal camera. It helps a lot when you want to see where those hotspots are. You know, you get out there in a field with, you know, bales of hay, and we say, hey, these are the ones that are burning internally and stuff. These are the ones we're gonna have an issue with, or, you know, the riverbeds, the lake beds dried up, but we can use the drone to see temperature differences to tell guys, you know, where to avoid so they don't get stuck out there. You know, we can see the cold areas that are still retaining water versus what's actual dry lake bed. You know, finding different routes in there. Unfortunately, you know, I'm the one that carries it for our department. If I'm in charge, it's hard for me to necessarily be able to fly the drone. We only have one other pilot right now in our department to fly it. Benefit to us, though, is Texas game wardens are using drones. So we've got 3 game wardens in our area who love to come out and help us. They have trained with us. They know what we're looking for as command, so they can put their drones up. One of them in this area is outfitted great. He's got a couple Go Command boxes, and he has a TV mount in the backseat of his truck, so he can flip that thing out. I've got a big 32-inch screen right here that I can see exactly what he's seeing from the air without having to have my hands on the joystick, so I can still continue to run command, but have visual from him, and he knows what I'm looking for, what I need to see. Well,
and Ryan, and we always go a couple of minutes late, so hang in with me, guys. But last thing I wanted you to talk about, Ryan, because the hour always flies by, the importance of speccing your wildland apparatus, you know, whether it's a type 6 or a type whatever, you know, the importance of speccing, because we just went through this. I mean, it's the same thing like when you're doing, like John and I have talked about speccing engines. Scott has, Curtis has, you know, well, I want to get one like the FDNY because they're a great fire department, but that may not work for your particular department. Maybe you need more water. Maybe you need more ladders. Maybe you need a rescue pumper instead of just a pumper. But we talked about in fact, Wichita West, your department, and I worked for you, and there were times I'd call you on the way going, do you want 723 or do you want 724? Because depending where we went, the terrain can be flat and a hay field and all this and grass to crappy ass rugged, you know, if you know, so talk about the ins and outs and maybe someone's thoughts on specking the right. What are you thinking specking a rig wise, you know, for wildland?
So one of our biggest ones in our type 6, we've only had it 4 years now or so. When we started specking it out, we kind of had an idea, or we thought we knew what we wanted. One of the biggest things I can say is get out there and look at what other departments have. You know, don't talk to just the manufacturers of these. They're going to sell you the bells and whistles and, oh, you know, this is what so-and-so bought, this is what they bought. Get out there and talk to those other companies, those other, you know, departments, and look at theirs and say, what do you like about this? What do you not like about this? So, you know, we went and looked at a few different ones. We started talking to 3 different manufacturers that build our type 6. And then for us, having the variety helps. So, we got our Type 6. It's a quick attack. It's got a crew cab to carry, 4 or 5 guys if we really needed to. Carries a lot of equipment. There's no riding cages on it or anything. So you're going to be walking the line in front of and behind the truck as necessary. It gets out there fast anywhere we need to go. It's a smaller chassis on a 550 Ford F550 chassis. So it's more maneuverable. If we need to get it down into river bottom and stuff, if we want to go follow a dozer line, it works great for that. Again, if we get a little further out west where it's more rocky, more drop-off terrain and stuff, a little bit more remote, having our Type 4s carry 1,000 gallons of water. Just
my favorite, 724.
Yeah, 720, 724 Type 4 engines. Not quite a Type 3 because we don't carry the required hose on there and stuff, so it falls under Type 4, but gives us that 1,000 gallons. It goes a lot further than our 300 gallons on our Type 6. But it's more maneuverable. We still stick with a 4-wheel drive, but it gives us higher clearance and stuff when we're in some of that rocky terrain stuff there. A little bit more beefy tires that aren't going to get punctured quite as easily with some of the mesquites and stuff as well.
That was my favorite. I used to love it because I had the ground sweep. I felt like the king. I would take that. Both rigs were great, but man, I love driving 724 for you because it's like I could take that thing anywhere, run over stuff, through stuff, around stuff, plenty of water, ground sweeps. It was, and you could see if you're driving, you could see. But then the Type 6 worked out great other ways. So good advice. Well, let's close things out here. Wildland, Wildfire, Wooey, whatever you refer to it in your area. Scott, any closing thoughts?
No, Rick, where I am now, we don't have an issue. It's all concrete here now. But I think like everything else, pre-planning, identifying your resources ahead of time, and kind of having an idea of how you want to handle the early stages of the incident. That's what starts bad, stays bad. That which starts good, typically you can work with. So I would just say, put in the work on the front side and then set up a good command structure so that you don't waste your resources. You are as effective as you can possibly be with what you have. And then wear the appropriate set of gear, pay attention to the weather, and hope for the best.
Perfect. Curtis, closing thoughts?
No, I just think everything we've talked about is real important, and just everybody's got to look at their place and their resources and their capabilities and stay within them. Everybody, like he was saying, people don't wear the right gear, or they don't bring the right equipment, or they buy what's the nicest thing at the show. Really do some assessment of your place and your capabilities and what you're willing to do and not do, and stay within them. And these things will kill you just as bad as a structure fire or anything else that we do. So be careful and do it right. And if you can't, call for help.
If it's not the fire, the tree's going to hit. There's all kinds of things. John, Chief Salka, closing thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, obviously what Scott and Curtis just said are all valid things. Stuff like turnout gear and rigs that's almost universal. You just gotta, like they said, you got to look at your terrain. You got to look at your fire problem, and just like we look at our buildings, right? Some people have 3 engines and a quint, and some people have 2 engines and 2 tower ladders because they get 6-story buildings. Well, depending on what your terrain is, what the geography is, even down to hand tools, right? I mean, some places got thousands of acres of pine trees and a foot and a half, 18 inches of pine needles on the forest floor that you got to dig through if you get a fire, right? Other places don't have a pine needle within 100 miles of the place, but they got a lot of, brush and leaves and branches and twigs, and guys may need different hand tools to dig through different types of terrain. And you can't wait till the fire to just like I say about buildings. The first time you're in a building shouldn't be at a fire. Well, the first time you're up in the woods fighting a wildland fire shouldn't be, the day you're figuring out, man, this hoe doesn't work, or this pitchfork doesn't work, or this, whatever it is you have, you got to personalize your stuff.
Know your stuff. Just we talk about that with everything else. Spec your rig, spec your tools, get your stuff for what your needs are. Ryan, Chief Fetzer, well, before I ask you for your closing thoughts, I have one more thought on your Type 6, because for Captain Chris Bashford, I don't know who spec'd the lighting package on that rig. You know where I'm going. Chris will know. That's an inside joke. It is phenomenal. So whoever spec'd the lights in that thing did a great job. I always tell Chris that.
You're never going to miss it out there.
Ryan, it has always been an honor to work for you, whether it's just being at the firehouse or at a structure fire or a pin and accident, but a brush fire. But your thoughts on and John, I wish you could see Ryan run a fire. Scott Kerr, same thing. There's no yelling, no hollering. I mean, just even keel, good, solid command.
As it should be.
Oh, I love working for him. It was like, anyway, Ryan, your closing thoughts for when we were talking wildland stuff. Your closing thoughts on this topic.
I think the other guys covered it pretty well. Have the right tools out there. Make sure you wear your PPE. Just like with any scene, our biggest thing is make sure you go home safe at the end of the day. But because we're talking wildland, we always remind people on wildland fire, LCES, lookouts, communications, escape routes, and safety zones. Keep those in mind so you go home after every fire.
And my favorite one was the escape route, because I was always freaking looking for one, because I'd get jammed up. I'd get wrapped. I'm like trying to get back to where I was safe, to get back to my little safety area and everything else. But Ryan, if someone wanted to talk to you, career volunteer, especially some of the volunteer departments that are like, God, I just need to talk to someone that understands my pain. What's a good email for them to get a hold of you, bud?
You can reach me at chief@wichitawestfd.org.
Perfect. Scott, good email, buddy.
Scott@fireserviceleadership.com. But if you reach out to me about wildland fires, I'm going to forward it to Chief Fetzer, because I don't have anything for you. Save yourself a keystroke and just send it right to him, because you're not getting nothing out of me.
Scott, real quick, if they want to access your mentoring program, which is phenomenal, what do they got to do?
Yeah, same place. Go to fireserviceleadership.com. I got 2 documents on there. I have the formal mentoring process, and I have a training packet which talks about the training season and company preparedness drills. They're free. Just put a little information in, and I'm trying to get that in the hands of every fire department in America. So download it and do what you can with it.
Perfect. Curtis, if they want to get a hold of you at Pearland?
Yeah, if anybody needs to get a hold of me, it's cburt@pearlandtx.gov.
And tell that great boss, Chief Jay Taylor. Tell that great boss of yours that we said hi. We love that guy.
Will do.
You're a fire chief. You want to see another guy and how to make it happen? Go see Jay Taylor. And Chief Salka, good email for you.
ChiefJohnSalka@gmail.com. And like Scott said, don't bother calling me about brush fires, because you know more about it than I do, no matter who you are. But I do have a lot of other stuff that I got a little experience with, and I still travel around a little bit, so I'd be happy to come out and talk to you. Yep.
Oh, just go to Ryan. Just go to Chief Fetzer. He'll help you out.
Please.
Oh, God. All right, folks. We're on most of the social media sites. You better get a hold of us. Our next show date is December 18th. Our team, the 4 of us, Scott, John, Kurt, and myself, we've got the 3rd Wednesday of every month. John, I also have the command post the 3rd Thursday of every month. You'll get that one tomorrow.
Like the following orders one you guys just did. That was good.
Good one.
That's one of our favorite, buddy. And then tomorrow's
an easy one. That's an easy one.
You would think, right? You would think.
The one we got tomorrow is on the 360, the importance of doing a good 360 when it comes to size up. But folks, Fire Engineering always has some great hangouts here on Wednesdays. The podcasts in the evening are phenomenal. Just go to fireengineering.com. You're already there. Look at the ribbon bar at the top. You want Firefighter Nation, which Stephanie says she's doing a great job with that. You want FDIC, you want GEMS, whatever it is, it's all right there for you. And we always end all of our shows with this very important statement. It's very close to a lot of us. In fact, each and every one of us on this panel. We always ask you, keep the men and women, armed forces in your thoughts and prayers. And remember, never forgetting means just that, never forgetting. Be safe. God bless you. We'll see you next time. Chief Fetzer, thank you, brother. Love you. Appreciate you.
You're going to get some emails.
I'm ready for it.
Forwarded from Scott.
Forwarded.